I remember attending an online concert themed around the holidays where, about 5 minutes in, I realized something felt off. I must have missed something in the advertising. There was music, sure, holiday carols, familiar tunes, well performed, but there was also a large text banner across the screen asking people to give to a local arts group, and it never went away. The entire time the music was happening, the banner stayed there. Give, donate, support. What I thought I was going to be attending as a concert slowly started to feel more like a telethon that happened to include holiday music. Hi everybody, my name's Jeff Price, and I'm the host of Intentional Musicianship, where we look at everything that happens around center stage, and just as importantly, everything that happens around it to help musicians create more meaningful experiences for their audiences. Today, I want to talk about money, not in a technical sense, and not in a sales sense, but in the sense that no matter who you are as a musician, money is part of the ecosystem, and how you ask for it matters. I was recently up in Toronto, and I noticed something I've seen many times before, whether it be Disneyland or Disney World, but this time it really stood out. Whether it was the aquarium, the CN Tower, or the local museum, every experience ended the same way. You exited through a gift shop. Now, nobody goes to these places for the gift shop. The gift shop is not the experience. It exists because the experience worked. When people have a meaningful experience, they often want to linger. They want to reflect. They want a way to say, this mattered to me. Sometimes that means a purchase. Sometimes it's just a conversation. Sometimes it's just time. The gift shop isn't pressure. It's just an option. And that got me thinking about music. No matter who you are, a student, an educator, part of a nonprofit organization, or a professional musician, you're always asking for money in some form. It might be ticket sales, it might be a fundraiser, it might be donation, tips, or merchandise. The question isn't whether musicians ask, the question is how and when. Now, you don't want to start a relationship by asking for money. You have to develop something first. You create value, you earn trust. But if something worked, if something connected, it becomes reasonable to give people a way to engage after the final note. That isn't selling out, that's just finishing the experience. This brings me back to that holiday concert experience. The problem wasn't fundraising, the problem was misrepresentation. If I had seen those advertisements that this was an exclusive holiday benefit concert for a local arts group from the start, that would have changed everything. I would have known what I was attending. And by attending, I would have consented by their ask. The expectations I had and the intent would have been aligned. Instead, people showed up for that concert like me, not knowing that this was going to be a constant fundraising environment. And that was a breach of expectation. Audiences don't mind being asked for money. They mind being surprised by what they're being asked to attend. When expectations are breached, trust erodes, even when the cause is worthy. In nonprofit and educational settings, the ask works best when it comes with clarity. We're inundated with requests to give. Everywhere we go, there's a QR code asking for support. The problem isn't the QR code. The problem is when we don't know what the money is for. And I'm not just talking about a big thing, just give to this department of this university. It just needs to be more specific. Most audiences aren't allergic to giving, they're allergic to ambiguity. 3 things matter: where you are right now in the process, what does the money do next, and what changes because of the gift. If you were in a school, for example, and said this at a concert, we've raised 70% of what we need to go on this trip. This covers the transportation so every student can go. That turns giving into an informed choice, not a vague obligation. Now, if you're a part of a nonprofit or an educational organization and you want a deeper, more comprehensive look at the different ways arts organizations can fund their work, one resource I strongly recommend is Run It Like a Business by Aubrey Bergauer. She does an excellent job laying out the full landscape of possibilities, including donations, ticket models, subscriptions, and long-term sustainability. I've read the book in print, digitally, and I've listened to it, and it's one of the clearest overviews I've come across. Now, this isn't completely what this episode is trying to do, but if you want to understand the systems and options available to arts organization, it's a very solid place to start. For independent and working musicians, they operate just a little bit differently, but the principles can be the same. A pianist in a piano bar doesn't stop the music to explain rent. A supper club doesn't pause the show to justify payroll. The ask lives in the environment. So you might have a tip jar with a simple sign, might have something that says requests welcome, tips appreciated. There might be a sign-up sheet with more information. In places like Branson, the show itself is the invitation to connect and give. You're not pressured to support. Instead, you're invited to take a piece of the experience with you home. That could be a recording, a video, a keepsake, something that ends up completing the night. Even when independent and working musicians mention tour expenses or future projects, it works best when it's framed as what makes the work possible, not as a plea. You might say something like, if tonight meant something to you, here's a way to carry it forward. You can tell a friend, sign up for our mailing list, sign up for our social media, or maybe even consider buying some merchandise as you leave. That ends up being appreciation, not obligation. And this is where reflection matters. One of the most overlooked moments in music is what happens after the final note. When audiences are rushed out the door, the relationship ends abruptly. But when you give people space to linger, whether that is a conversation, a display that they can look over, a simple memory board where people can engage and sign, or the merchandise table, you give them time to reflect. And that reflection matters. Reflection leads to ownership, and ownership leads to support. Not because you pushed harder, but because you finished the experience well. A sign that says, feel free to leave a note on our memory board, does more than collect comments. It completes the experience. Not an announcement, not a pitch, just information. Nothing is asked out loud, nothing is explained on the microphone, even though sometimes it could be. That is the working musician version of exiting through a gift shop. And as you can see from all of these musicians and groups, there are a lot of similarities that can work for both. The support lives in the environment, not the performance. If someone wants to engage more, the option needs to be there. If they don't, nothing about the experience is diminished. And yes, sometimes you got to be a little bit more direct. Think about entertainers at a local Renaissance fair who call for support at the end of an act. That's how they make their money. They make it natural, they make it brief, they have fun with it, and then they move on. So here are 3 things to talk about. 1, lead with the experience, not the ask. 2, be clear about purpose and impact. And finally, design the ending as intentionally as the performance. Now, there's no right way to do this. You don't need to invent something new, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's perfectly reasonable to look at what already works for others, borrow those ideas, and then shape them to fit you, your group, and the community you serve. What matters isn't copying a system perfectly. What matters is choosing an ending intentionally. Success at center stage should naturally create an opportunity to support what just happened. Not through guilt, not through pressure, but through clarity, respect, and honest design. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me today. You can always reach out to us at intentionalmusicianship.com. I'd love to hear from each and every one of you. At the end of the day, this isn't about finding the right way to ask. It's about choosing a way that fits who you are, what you value, and the community you serve. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope you'll join us on the next episode of Intentional Musicianship.